Hi everyone, I'm Jillian. I'm a learning advisor with Academic Skills, and in this short video I'm going to cover thesis statements, and in the next one we'll talk about structure. So thinking about thesis statements, and what are they? They do two things. They give your answer to the question that you've devised, in this case for Essay 2 of ASIA 1030, and they add a brief summary of your reasons. So that combined is going to equal your thesis statement. So keep that in mind as you write your thesis statements, but also as we look at these examples. So thinking about these examples, let's get our head around this question, because this is the example question we'll be looking at for thesis statements and for structures. So the question is, what historical ideas about masculinity shape contemporary practices in South Korea? What new concepts are emerging? So that's two questions. So we might expect a bit of a longer thesis statement in that regard. And so for this statement, we have Korean conceptions of masculinity are a product of a myriad of traditional and modern influences, such as Confucian gender ideals. Okay, so that's very descriptive and broad. It doesn't discuss how those influences, the Korean gender ideals and others, influence and shape contemporary practices. It doesn't have that link, which is really important in that question, and helps you to provide an analytical answer by not just identifying what are these historical ideas, but how do they shape contemporary practices. And it doesn't talk about that second question, what new concepts are emerging. So let's look at a little bit of a better statement, but still quite unclear. Historical ideas about masculinity include male association with the public sphere and men's connection to militaristic structures, with an emphasis on strength and dominance. Okay, so that's a little bit more focused, identifying those various historical ideas, but it doesn't tell us, again, how those ideas shape contemporary practices. So that's the really important key in this question. And in a lot of the questions you'll be creating and be given, it is about that cause and effect link. How do these ideas shape contemporary practices? And that's something you have to come up with and convince us of that link. And again, this thesis statement doesn't engage with that second question, what new concepts are emerging? So let's look at this one. That's pretty good. The historical ideas about masculinity are Confucian gender ideals, men's association with the public sphere of work and economic production, and Korea's militaristic structure, which has created a form of masculinity emphasizing strength and dominance. However, new concepts are emerging, such as a softer form of masculinity seen in popular entertainment and the male beauty industry. Okay, so this does directly answer the question. That's really good. You can think of it as a bit plain. It does just kind of list things, and then it just kind of says, however, and answers the next question. There's not as much of a link as you might want to see between the answer to question 1 and the answer to question 2. So plain is good, but you might want to think about creating those connections more clearly, using a little bit more specific word choice. In this case, giving yourself maybe even a bit more space to fully address the question and really show that you're very aware of and can articulate that connection between those historical ideas and how they shape contemporary practices. So let's look at a really good thesis statement. As you can see, it's quite long. When you do have a question like this, you can give yourself more space within the essay in order to really articulate your answer as well as your reasons. So let's look at this one. Confucian gender ideas continue to pervade contemporary understanding of male dominance and superiority, contributing to the rise of a distinctly dominant form of masculinity. So already there we're getting that link. They're talking about Confucian gender ideals from the past, the historical ideas, and right in that first sentence of the thesis statement, connecting that to contemporary practices and what's going on today. These ideals associate men with an outer sphere of public life, placing masculinity in sharp contrast to the private, softer sphere of femininity. These ideas have been reinforced with the emergence of the capitalist industrial state and the association of men with the productive economic sphere. Moreover, Korea's militaristic culture has promoted a form of militarized masculinity, placing emphasis on male strength and dominance. Okay, so there we have that list that we saw in that previous example, but it's kind of spelled out in a smoother way. And each of those particular historical ideas that the student has picked up on it has its own sentence, and then we can get a more of a sense of that historical idea and how that's been brought forward to shape the ideas of today. However, new concepts of a softer form of masculinity are emerging as a reaction to disillusionment with traditional norms. So that's a nice connection between the two questions. Because of these contemporary practices, we get to this newer concepts emerging, and we get that link made really explicitly at the end of the thesis statement. Evidenced within popular entertainment and a thriving male beauty industry. So I hope those examples helped you to see how you can begin to develop a really refined and sophisticated thesis statement, if that is indeed your aim. And as you can see from this diagram, thesis statements are really key to your essay writing process. So you do want to spend quite a bit of time creating really good and clear ones so that you can go ahead and create the rest of your essay, a really good structure and a really good essay. Okay, see you in the next video.